February 24th meeting to order, 4:30 PM. We'll start by introductions, please. Tom, would you begin?
Yes, Tom Schneider, work employee. I forget what I am.
Yeah, sure. Stan Daly, board member.
Diane Zeller, board member.
Kitty Macy, board member.
John Kara Smith, board member, and I want to thank everybody on such short notice to say I needed a ride, and Stan responded, and Kitty came by, so thank you all.
Jane Conley, Cosmento, board member.
Right on the big screen, zooming in.
Debbie Godden, port employee.
Kim Natoli, port employee.
Pat McMahon, port employee.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the January 13th meeting. It's Exhibit A. Are there any additions or corrections?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And next will be our operational report. That would be you, Tom.
Thank you, Connie. The first item there is the monthly operations update. And there's a report that's incorporated that really comes from our scales room that talks about the volume of trucks, rail cars, and vessels within any given month. And I was comparing this to the prior year. There was really about double coming in and about 2/3 of the amount from last year going out. And what's coming in primarily in going out are our three primary commodities. So that when we get into these winter months, and we don't have any special projects or the marina operations, really what we have is potash that come in earlier and is now going out. It's going out by truckload. We have grain that was still coming in January from farmers, from their silos as they sold to our customer, filling the silo, and then we're loading it back out onto rail car to send along to the customer who's we have a contract the long grain in the silo. Then there are the various commodity brokers who ship aluminum here and then ship it over to, well, they bring it in here either via vessel, which we didn't have any in January. They bring it in by a rail car, they bring it in by a truck, and then they principally ship it out to Novellis by truck. And it's not until it crosses that line of delivery that that ownership conveys over from the commodity brokers that you see here to the user, who's really their customer. Although we are going to be receiving aluminum direct from Novellis, which will really make them more our customer, as well as the primary manufacturer in the area that we supply to, or that we function as a supply chain for. So potash, grain, aluminum. All three of these operations, particularly grain and aluminum, have been fairly significantly impacted by the weather conditions, particularly in February, but in January, relative to the prior years, certainly not relative to historically. But these weather conditions are just going to cause, slower operation for ILA members, more overtime in snow handling, particularly in the mornings, to get prepared so that the aluminum can be moved. You imagine, this is aluminum stored outdoors, and you're getting 40 40, 50, 60 inches of snow and ice accumulating, and so there's a lot of work that has to go towards breaking that up, clearing the tracks, de-icing the tracks, de-icing the switches, and getting the switches to move. The silo itself is very temperamental in the colder weather. I think, Pat, you could probably talk a little bit more to how weather has impacted operations, because you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it financially. Not only are you seeing it in January, although there are a couple of other items in January, but you're going to see it in February and possibly into March. But maybe just focusing a little bit upon the challenges that we've had on the grain side, and the temperamentalism of a very complex silo system, and then the more ordinary grain and aluminum conditions.
Yeah, the silo, when the temperature gets colder, everything wants to freeze up there. A lot of the components up there are ran by air actuators. So there's an air compressor downstairs, it sends all the air to all these actuators, and every time we do something, like when we're ready to load a rail car, once the computer starts, you'll say, okay, let's start. If something's froze, it won't let you go through each step. So you may go to step 1 and then you go to step 3 because 2 is froze. So now we have to go up top, find what's froze, thaw it out, and then we start running again.
So it's typically like a pump system that freezes up?
Yeah, the pumps.
You gotta be concerned, right, because the motor can go in.
Correct. And then you have to be careful because if you're trying to load a rail car and the components aren't working properly, then the system won't run right. You can send grain in the wrong direction. So that's,
Thanks.
it's getting harder. Now that the temperature's warmed up, now the silo's starting to act normal.
You don't have any kind of a heat system, right?
That would be my question, is there any way to put a heat system in that would keep that from happening?
No, because it would be too much.
What about a dehumidifier?
Well, all the airlines have dehumidifiers on them.
I think the reality is, and what we're gonna have to be talking about as we look at contracts, and this theme is gonna repeat itself relative to how do we prepare ourselves for our new fiscal year starting April 1 in terms of contracts and pricing. But, you know, I'm not so sure we should be operating or opening ourselves up to operations when temperatures are under 20 degrees. Or perhaps it's a season in which we don't commit ourselves to operation. Because what we commit ourselves to is cost. And then we're taking on the cost under conditions that really this machinery was not meant to operate in. And I think we have to either, look at how we either cover that cost if we remain open, or there's a period in time which the agricultural center where the silo is not available for receipt and distribution of grain. I think that's going to be conversations with our customer, but certainly they don't want to be sending empty rail cars here that they own and having us not be able to fill them up and get them back up to CSX.
So do we, excuse me, Tom, are we getting rail cars now in this?
Yes.
We are?
Yes, we loaded rail car with grain today. And because we were over 30 degrees, it was a fairly smooth operation.
We have 7 of them we loaded in the past couple days. I mean, I've been keeping Tom informed. We've had issues with how cold it's been. You try to load a car, something freezes up. I'm climbing up and down that thing trying to find it. But we do have them. We have 4 more coming in either this coming Thursday, or next week. But our customer is sending more cars now to start taking the product out of the silo. to get ready for the new product they wanna bring in.
Is this a discussion we can
I
have?
got a question, and how typical is it for us to receive rain at this time of year?
Yes,
Is
so
this unusual, or is this business as usual?
that is a great question that without, me having more experience in what business as usual looks like. But, I think it's going to be usual for us to be emptying into rail cars. The receipt that we had during, some very inclement weather really becomes challenging, because what you're doing is you're opening up the pit
Yes.
to receive from, either a bottom load truck or a truck that tips in top loads. And if it's top load, it's tarped or covered, you're bringing a lot of moisture in with it, as opposed to if it's just got, 2 emptying buckets on the bottom of the truck. But we were receiving trucks in January from farmers.
Yes.
Certainly not coming out of the field, so it has to be coming out of their storage units. They're selling it to DeLong, it's coming to us. And, these are farmers who are looking to make sure that their product is moving and their product is sold. And we're able to facilitate that. But there comes a point in time where we're facilitating it in conditions that, maybe that complex silo system with all of its pumps and hydraulics wasn't meant to operate in. And I say, it's 20 miles inland is a lot different than sitting here on the tip of the lake.
So does the wind chill affect it?
Mhm.
And is it prolonged cold, or is it as soon as it gets cold, it starts
No,
freezing?
if you get like the rain, the cold, that's when everything
It's a combination of moisture and cold and potentially some grain dust.
Yeah.
So think about water, some grain dust, forming a little bit of a,
Crystallization.
more of a glue-like, sediment that then kind of freezes along actuators that are functioning off of, some form of pneumatic control. And pad up on top of the silo in, minus 30 degrees, trying to, get it to move from, taking it in to pushing it out. It's a great facility. We could use some improvements. Could have been built with a little more thought process relative to drainage. But still, I don't want to downplay the value that it has. What I'm concerned about, what I'll continue to be concerned about from our standpoint is, how many days during the winter are we operating at losses because we're trying to, do things that take a lot more labor hours than they would in these near blizzard conditions.
So basically, you're talking about fixed costs being mostly labor.
And it's funny, it's both fixed and variable, because it's variable in terms of when you're calling in a crew and what your expectation is for the next day, and then what happens the next day. And this goes for the aluminum too. For the last week, fortunately we knew, and we didn't call labor for rail cars coming in, but CSX could not get from Fulton to here on last Tuesday and last Thursday, which is when they bring cars in. So, you have to know when, you're calling labor, we're doing it according to the contract. I don't think enough of our contracts really have enough standby labor clauses or addendums that indicate that, hey, if you're bringing, you know, trucks to load and, you know, we call a crew, and there's, you know, 3 trucks that make 3 turns, that's a lot different than 6 trucks making 6 turns in terms of what our revenue is relative to that variable cost that becomes fixed once you call the crew.
You can't win. I mean,
It's very
you can't take that attitude, but
it's complicated, and, you know, look, we're a state authority, we're a public service, public benefit corporation, but we can't operate without having income that moves into capital that's reinvested into the facility. And so, you know, we do have here, you know, some very good operations, some real good new equipment and capabilities, and a great deal of deferred maintenance on existing facilities. Because the grant funding that we get is always going to be for, you know, new construction, new equipment, new jobs. But it's not gonna be for fixing the roof of a, you know, 75-year-old building. And so these are just the early experiences that you know, I'm trying to learn. Unfortunately, you know, we have people here who've been through it before. Pat, you maybe want to talk about outside of how weather conditions affect the agricultural side, but how it affects how much more handling has to be done with the aluminum.
Yeah, with the weather that has been, you know, all the snow that we had, it's taking us longer with our equipment to help the longshoremen get to the aluminum. Like at our north end of the warehouse, we have aluminum at the north end. With the thaw and everything we're having, we were out there just last week with our loader beating 6 inches of ice because the ice was taller than the aluminum, so the guys could not get underneath with the forklifts. We were out there with blow torches and chipping hammers and loaders and everything else. It's just, it slows everything down so much with the ice that we have. We can't get salt, so now we're dealing with that. We changed from salt, sand mix, now we've gone from just sand and they call them 1As, they're little pea stones, they look like little BBs. And that's what we have to put down on the ground now. And then hoping that the sun comes out to warm the parking lot up so that we can get traction for these guys.
Those who don't know, the past mild winters led to really challenges, I think, for those who are normally used to buying and selling salt. And they went through a few years of losses, and therefore you tend to then buy less in the future, and then you get hit with you know, a winter like this, and there's shortages all over. So it's just, I put weather conditions in here just as a challenge to the business model that will show in the financial statements in January and February, but it's certainly not a long-term concern. Wanted to keep board aware that this vessel that was really abandoned here still sits at the edge of our pier, and we did get the Coast Guard to come down from Alex Bay, but they couldn't board because they slipped a little bit too far from the wall, and they didn't want to take that risk without their safety equipment. But they did note that it's a potential environmental and navigational hazard, and I'm hoping that they circle back to us. My next move was to talk to local law enforcement, but when we got hit with the last 2 weeks of weather, I didn't want to pull people away and ask them to come in and talk to us about an abandoned vessel. Unfortunately, from the Coast Guard's perspective, they're looking at it as a commercial vessel, it's a private vessel, and it's moored in our marina, and therefore it's a private-to-private transaction. So they're looking at it just like if somebody left a boat in one of our slips, and we could easily, take that out and store it or sell it or, you know, salvage it. In this particular case, you know, we can't move that. And somebody has to, and also the Coast Guard is supposed to have the capability, and we've asked them to see if there's, you know, an insurance provider out there, because D&I Insurance, which this is covered under, does have the salvage provisions for abandoned vessels. So, you know, we're going to continue to walk down this road, but the closer we get to marina season, the more urgent it is to get that vessel.
They haven't located the supposed owner.
No, you know, I sent correspondence, you know, directly as sort of demand notification, sort of a preliminary stop in a legal process to gain, you know, title eventually. I'm not so sure that we want to be quick on gaining title.
Sure.
So we'll walk this slowly, and we'll keep the board informed. There's a lot going on with aluminum, both prospectively, that is, ingots that are coming in that can't go direct to the manufacturing plant and are being rerouted to here. These are some larger ingots. Also, we're informed that we'll be receiving the ingots by rail from Guthrie, Kentucky, direct from Novellis, who will then be our customer. So, you know, there's been a lot of activity in the handling and storage of aluminum. You can certainly see it all over the place in the yard. And, you know, it's starting to, there's more requests that we're seeing to sort by alloy and size, which, you know, creates an added complexity to the storage. And again, at some point, needs to be reflected in the pricing and the contracts for how we handle it. I think there were years when there wasn't much coming through, and we got into a very competitive mode on pricing. That allowed us to maybe perhaps not keep pace with the inflationary rates and the reality of complexity of how our labor is called by contract versus how informed we are of what demand requirements are going to be. And, you know, we have to close that gap one way or the other. And one of the ways we can close it is, you know, by taking advantage of our unique positioning in the marketplace and pricing for it, and then being able to price lower, the more communication that occurs.
Are there comps out there for other?
No, there's, I will talk in executive session about, you know, working with someone in the industry to try and build better pricing models for us. And ones that are more comparable to what a private stevedoring company would be doing. So there's a couple of other things on there. The Murad PIDP grant that was held up. That's one for the warehouse modernization. That is, we had a kickoff meeting last week. There's a long process involved with that. I'd like to talk about it a little bit more in executive session. The H.W. White Museum continues their efforts on the LT5, and you know, if you haven't been informed by one of their board members, then I'll put you on his call list.
I mean, this is to be taken seriously because
Very.
there's such a liability for that.
Yeah, very. And they're doing a good job of trying to get grants, and you know, it's given us some.
They have the grant, don't they?
Yes, and they didn't move fast enough.
So they lost it?
No, they're in danger of losing it, and they're trying to reconfigure. And the grant was really to move the vessel, by a tug to a dry harbor for retrofitting. Now they're looking for a dry dock solution here locally without having to move it because the move is very expensive. But if we can just get to the point where it's defueled through the grant process, then we'll be in a better position from a liability perspective than we were before. And frankly, if we can get it dry docked, yes. Yes. Yes.
You told us that the Coast Guard was here February 4th.
Yes.
Did they leave a report? Why were they here?
Because we called them and asked them, what their recommendations were relative to this vessel.
Okay.
And they assured us many times that they weren't going to take on that responsibility. They did come because there is, we spoke to them about environmental and navigational hazards along the Oswego River as part of the New York State Canal System, which is about to have its anniversary. We certainly don't need to have any local disasters. So they came down and they did note that it represented an environmental hazard.
Good.
And so there's a follow-up that needs to take place there. I just giving
Now you're
them
talking
time
about
to
which
do.
vessel now?
That was the
Still watch.
Still watch. I know that we were talking about the LT5. So the difference is the LT5 we own is a part of the basically White Museum's pieces that it is looking to attract visitors for, having participated in World War II and the Normandy invasion. And they've been able to get some grant money for refurbishment and have a lot of effort and activity going towards that.
Yeah, I mean, we
But
have to do
it
something.
still hasn't resolved, so.
Defueling, I think worst case scenario,
Yeah.
what would happen if
Yeah.
it, boom, you're in bad shape, right, Frank?
Yeah, if I get that right, if it's in the, we're talking about the LT5, then, we also have the derelict boat too, that I was talking to Tom earlier today about, that, we have to go through the process like any other derelict boat that's left on our property, to get that mechanics clean, and then we have to follow through with that, and get it up to point, sell it for scrap, and dump it. And, the LT5, now, I can't hear all the conversation here, but what I understand with the LT5 is the Maritime Museum was looking at dry docking it right across from the derelict boat. And we can discuss that in executive session and what our plans are, what we feel about that. But that's gonna be an issue that's gonna be coming up for a topic.
Next to the derelict crane. Next to the crane, the derelict crane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not the vessel. Yeah.
And we initially talked about it, when I talked about working about it, was over by the KO Pier and going in there and dry docking it. But I think that's putting horse before the cart before the horse on this, because they gotta first secure the money that they're gonna be able to do this with. And once that money is secured, then we can have this conversation.
And I will tell you that he's a force, and he gets people's attention, and he's driving hard on this, so I'd let him drive hard until, they're successful or not successful,
They gotta
and
come
we
to
can
us
step
at
in.
some point.
Yeah,
I think it'd be, because I did make a phone call to Bob and basically let him know that, nothing has been decided on our part, so, for them to be moving forward with anything, as far as a location that's in our
yeah,
marina,
but
really needs to be discussed. discuss.
Yeah.
And,
But that's their alternative planning in order to try to preserve the grant. And at this point,
So the grant
It's
is
doable.
dependent on them defueling, is that part of the grant contingency?
it's not a contingency of it, it's part of the award to have the money to do the defuel in a very, environmentally safe manner.
I think at one point, almost a year ago, we were talking about defueling costs being in between $30,000 and $40,000. At some point in time, I think we've got to decide we're gonna do it ourselves.
Yeah. Yep.
For
What
future
I would like
discussion.
is for the title to transfer over. And so working cooperatively with the museum for a successful transfer of title is in our best interests.
Soon.
Sooner rather than later. I know this has gone on. Just a number of meetings, and I won't spend much time on them. There's been, no meeting of operations, Oswego County, New York State Parks and Canal System, Center State CPO. Oh, New York State Parks was, again, just some cooperative neighbor type meetings with the fort and the individual who's overseeing the fort and the property that we share that's now overgrown with trees, and some ways that we can move forward cooperatively in getting that in better shape. Pat's participated with me in all of these meetings, including with the DPW, which, we said we would, just ask us if you need any help, and had a couple of things came up almost right after that where they needed or asked for our assistance, and we were able to respond.
They had a issue with a light pole on Seneca Street Bridge. The commissioner was a little nervous about taking it down, so he called us. We went up with our equipment and assisted the city by taking the light pole down for the safety of, people around. So that's, we helped them out with that.
Great, thank you.
And then we also did, the commissioner asked Tom about using the Fitzgibbon site for the winter because of all the snow that we've had. They're running out of room at the west side water tower.
They're using to dump all the snow into it?
So, yeah, so Tom allowed them to dump the snow. And if the snow is still there in June, the commissioner said he would come in and help,
Get rid of it?
spread it out to melt it fast enough. But we did clean up a good section of Fitzgibbons, allowing the city to bring the snow here.
So how high are the mountains?
It's not high yet.
Okay,
I mean,
it's gonna get there
we're,
though.
we're their backup for the east side. So
Okay,
now it just started Friday, but they've been keeping it all tight in the corners and everything else. And if it has to, they'll bring the blowers in and they'll make the banks higher.
Is it one of our laydown areas for?
Yeah, it's right, actually,
Yeah.
it's where the blades were, it's on the concrete. Tom and I decided we'll keep them on the concrete instead of putting them in the dirt area, because it's safer for the trucks to come in and on concrete than with this weather change. I don't wanna have too many ruts up there.
well, and it'll melt faster, won't it?
Yeah, and this is just about reestablishing
Good neighbors.
relationships.
Mhm.
So, with that, and, listen, it's easy for me to say, yeah, we can do it, but, Pat and Jim and Steve and others are the ones that are moving the stuff around and making it forward. And certainly, Jim Sharkey helped out too, and with the train and light pole. So, I appreciate everyone's efforts, and with that, I'm open to any questions.
No, it sounds
Any
pretty good.
questions?
No, I think it's great that you're helping.
We'll work well with everyone, and to mutual benefit.
Yes.
There will be times when we'll need the DPW's assistance on some roads or some curb cuts or, you know, maybe a sweeper for the yard, and we'll pay for it, but we'll also get positive responses. No fighting, no egos.
All right, no questions?
No fighting.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
we can then move on to, thank you, Tom, for our financial reports. Stan, are you gonna do that?
Yep, if I can read, don't have my glasses as usual. Quick report, cash position as of 1/1/25 is basically the same as it was 1 year ago, excuse me, 1/31/2025, as it was 1 year ago on 1/1/24. The cash position is well above the cash position of 1 month ago. On the balance sheet side, total assets as of January are well above 1 year ago and are slightly above total assets of 1 month ago. Total current assets continue to outweigh total current liabilities by a ratio of 2.3 to 1. That's considered pretty healthy. It's well over 2 to 1 ratio.
Thanks, Tom.
Oh,
Okay.
Thanks, Tom, I was able to.
Yes,
I wasn't
yes.
ready to hear. You know, maybe if somebody calls me on their phone and just sets their phone out, I can pick up the audio better. I don't know, but
There's
Look at
nothing
my
wrong.
phone.
this, we gotta do that the last time.
yeah. We'll try to speak up, and we'll move Mike into position
All right,
for speaking.
we'll see.
Okay, profit and loss statement, gross profit year-to-date from 4/24/04 to 1/31/25 is slightly below last year, about 17%. Current expenses compared to prior year-to-date are about the same. Net income year-to-date compared to prior year-to-date is up quite a bit, mostly due to grant receivables. Account payables year-to-date are down slightly compared to last month. Account receivables year-to-date are down quite a bit compared to last month year-to-date. And grant receivables, the port still has quite a bit to receive, so that's looking good right there. And that's basically my quick 90-second report. Again, I'll just say that obviously the port needs to be working at a profit. Our main mission statement, I've said this a couple times, and I know you'll agree, Tom, is we want to see how we're helping commerce throughout Oswego County and all of central New York. So,
The only way we can do that is if, look, we don't need to make return to ownership or shareholders, or, we don't have hurdle rates out there that we have to meet in order to, have our stock price go up.
Yeah.
But we need to have, net income being rolled into retained earnings so that we can reinvest in ourselves and, continue to maintain operational, efficiency. And there's a lot of deferred maintenance, and this isn't deferred maintenance over the last 4 years or the last 9 years. This is deferred maintenance over the last 30 years that I'm seeing. And it's not anyone's fault, it's because we're not making enough. And I think within that commerce exchange, the private sector is taking us a little bit for granted. And, the only way for us to respond effectively is to provide top-end service, which I do believe that we provide, and to be paid for it.
I mean, but on the expense side, grants for deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
Do we look at the state
No,
and other
those-
agencies
Yeah.
that do get, in
Yeah.
fact, grants for deferred maintenance?
Yeah, no, I think where we made some mistakes is that, we have to, if you accumulate too much, you're sweeping back into New York. But there are provisions in there that, affirmatively state holding reserves for maintenance. And I don't think that we've built up the reserves that we needed to for maintenance. And we're only gonna do that now, slowly over the next few years, by, making sure that we're managing our labor as effectively and efficiently as we can, but that we're also being paid for our time and efforts being put in.
With all the assets that we do have at court, we should be able to generate more income
There are
theoretically.
things that only we can handle. There are items that we are in a clear geographic advantage, where, frankly, you could almost have some pricing that's monopoly type pricing. But we wouldn't do that, and we wouldn't hurt our long-term reputation, but we're not getting paid what we need to get paid. And, we're gonna be working between now and April 1st to make sure that starting in our new fiscal year that our arrangements more aligned with how our labor force is utilized.
Again, I'm the newest one here, so I still have a lot of questions, but what will the impact be if we have to adjust our prices and then there are all these tariffs that hit customers as well? Is that, are we risking losing customers?
Yes, whenever you look at pricing and you're not talking about lowering pricing, then you're talking about risk of new business. And, that's kind of why, the curves of supply and demand needed a certain price point,
Right.
right? We have to test what that price point is. That's all I'm saying.
Makes sense.
But on the tariff side, that's gonna be universal, so that shouldn't really impact competitiveness, although it does impact us because of the amount of aluminum that's manufactured in Canada.
Right.
And, I don't think it's necessarily good policy, and I don't think that it's being communicated in a fashion that's settles business, that gives confidence in what forward projections look like. And I think we're seeing some of that chaos ripple through the marketplace.
Are there venues that produce aluminum in the Northeast that would benefit somebody like Novelis or someone else in the area that uses aluminum?
When you say the Northeast, do you mean in North American continent, or do you mean in Northeast America?
I guess I should be specific, right?
New England,
Pardon me?
you mean New England.
Yeah,
No.
I'm not aware of, and we really, we haven't been producers of, just like all the other manufacturing left, it's just like we're not primary producers of steel anymore. We're not primary producers of aluminum because, we moved that industry to lower labor and closer to the source mineral. So the source mineral is bauxite. The smelting plants were built in other countries closer to that bauxite. Frankly, smelting plants should be sitting adjacent to aluminum plants and iron, and steel plants. And iron smelting should be right next to steel. It's, and you ship in the raw material, and then you have a more vertically integrated process for your industry. So right now, there's not enough aluminum manufactured in the United States, and there's not enough steel manufactured in the United States for us to be imposing these tariffs without having significant impact on the costs of goods. And there's a long-term objective to bring that manufacturing back to the United States that I cannot disagree with. We should have fought to retain it to begin with.
True.
And when, as it comes back, it'll be better for us, but
You're talking 20 years.
it'll take time. And, you know, we need to have consistent policy that businesses can count on. And we can't keep changing from, you know,
Every 4 years.
every 4 years, having drastically different policy.
Well, we can trump and they can change every 6
Well,
weeks.
you know, you can, yeah, the communication is challenging. And prior to that, you know, some of the initiatives on, you know, decarbonization were equally impractical.
Well, let us move on. Stan, any more there?
That was it.
All right, any questions?
I would just say that I'm not, you know, there were a couple of non-recurring items in January, but January and February are going to be tough. I'm not happy with where the financials are. You all know my background, and a lot of my focus and energies will be towards making sure that we're operating at a margin that's appropriate for a public benefit corporation.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion to accept the administrative financial reports from exhibit combined C1 and exhibit C2?
So moved. I'll second.
Diane? Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Okay. Chairman's report.
Well, this has really been interesting because here I am down here in Florida, and you guys are getting hammered with all this snow. And immediately, you know, I've talked to town, you know, and I'm aware of the additional burden and expenses that go, the cost in moving aluminum and the coordination that's needed in order to do this efficiently. And I would also be aware of the silo and all the work and the freeze-ups and all those pneumatic and operating valves. So this has been a wake-up call in a way. We haven't had a hard winter like this in, you know, 6 years plus. So this is definitely going to happen. We're going to do a little more soul searching on how we can make things more efficient and how we, and basically how we're going to do business, because as Tom brought up, I mean, here we are, you know, are we going to start accepting grain in February? How are we going to coordinate these with the farmers, you know, in order to, and then what's the price going to be? There's got to be a cost plus built into this stuff so that, you know, that the port is still surviving and the farmers are going to be happy, you know. So, you know, I understand the challenges here that, you know, it's faced, and I also see the challenges like Pat over here must have to live here in order to, when that silo's operating in the winter, in order to keep it running. We've talked about this in the past when we talked about our 2 warehouse people that we wanted to bring in for just that purpose. You know, as a utility crew that can come up here and start working. So we got to revisit some of these things and revisit this with the union members so that you know, they understand that they're all part of this family. You know, we're all a big family here. We all got the same goal, and we feed off of each other. So hopefully, you know, we get the notes here and we look forward where we're going to go in the future and how we can correct this and put some clauses into our bidding
Very, very good comments, and particularly the last one.
Okay,
Okay, so that's all I got.
thanks, Frank.
Thank
Stay
you.
warm. Executive,
Yeah, I just wanted to note that, you know, I put in there no committee meetings in February. Apparently, there was an audit conducted on our website by the state, and we need to be putting a little bit more committee information in there than we have before. So
okay,
I wanted to make sure that the agenda reflected that no committee meetings took place before everyone reports out that they didn't meet. And so the agenda.
have we gone over
by
the,
state-
what, I guess you have
Yeah, no,
reviewed the website?
you know, we haven't,
In
Gone
relation
through
to the
that.
concerns from the state?
that audit letter, we have to respond to by March 10th, and we'll respond by March 10th, but, and my, main person here needed, to take some time, and her and her family get to take a
Okay.
well-deserved trip.
So there are no reports, because there were no meetings.
Yeah, so rather than go through and have everybody say that, I put that in, and therefore we're disclosing within the context of the agenda that there were no meetings.
All right, and we'll have a report next, we'll have information next meeting regarding
Yeah.
how we are addressing concerns.
Yeah, as, you know, in terms of, you know, those are very simple, just an audit of the website, it's not that big of a deal. But again, for good functioning committees, we need to round out the board more. And so I again ask for anybody's input on, you know, additional members. Please bring it forward. I'm pushing on that issue, and we'll continue to, and have the state's attention.
We need how many new members? Three.
Well, let's just start with 3, sure.
I don't know, obviously it should be your function, I'm not sure, to pursue this
It
with the
should
state.
be, it should be my fault, you know,
Have you
yes.
talked to any of them?
Yes, I spoke to Jim, actually invited him to the meeting, he would have come, just as a member of the public, but he went down south for a golf trip, so he'll be here next month.
Smart guy, see?
I have someone else I'm meeting with tomorrow, and
Has anybody checked with Laura Brozak?
With who?
Laura Brozak,
I don't know who that is.
the Democratic
Yeah. No, but do you have a name?
ex-commissioner.
Do I don't want to say publicly,
Yeah,
just yet.
we can
Oh,
do that.
right, you still have a
But
name?
the function is, you take down names, but you bring it to the board first to see
Yeah.
whether or not we've
Oh,
got any objections.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course.
You can do that in executive.
Yep.
All right, anything else for new business? Okay, on to old business. Wait,
Yeah, we really,
Wait.
we're,
okay.
we're really at the point where we look for a motion to move into executive session. And so,
Diane?
I'll second. Okay,
and
no,
board-
John seconded.
board
Second.
continuity there
John?
in that motion was about
At
the issue we
5:25.
were just discussing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're in executive session. Second? Good? At 5:59.
Don't look at me.
All in favor of going back into regular session?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Passed. So I would, I have an ad hoc motion as a result of executive session that we grant the yacht club one slip in the global marina for the 2025 season for their educational program.
I will
Move
second.
that.
You second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Before we take that, Fran, are you a yacht club member?
Oi.
Yeah, I'm a club member,
Okay,
so
could you
I'm
just-
at
Could
moving
you,
it.
yeah, no, I know, can you just disclose it?
Yeah, you
That's all.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, I've got to,
Disclose and then recuse, yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
one.
All right, it passes, so,
Again, on that stuff, Brent doesn't have to recuse if we don't think that the conflict is worthy of the recusal. It's the disclosure that has to happen. That's the most important thing, and then the board can decide what action that conflict leads to. Because that's not a big one.
okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Motion to adjourn.
Would someone keep the thermostat down?
6
so that we
PM
can-
then.
I'll second it.
We tried pumping
Hold
it
their
up.
thermostat down to keep the
We
meeting
stand
short.
adjourned at 6 PM.
Try bumping it up.
Wow.